Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Tuesday morning, August the 2nd. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And the chat room is open, and I popped the link in there to Robert Burney's web pages that we're looking at dealing with the inner child work, inner child healing, and spiritual integration. That's what he's written about, a piece about there, so that's what I kind of wanted to look at. So thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. I have a lot of people tuning into my shows, and I just appreciate you taking the time to do that. Everybody who's listening live and archived, and I say this on every show. It's just really important for somebody who may be tuning in for the first time that I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows. I'm not a counselor or a therapist or anything like that. I'm just a citizen, like a private citizen who's a survivor of child abuse, and I really wanted to just speak out against child abuse and wanted to be another voice out here talking about the issues surrounding child abuse, and also for survivors. I'm on my healing journey. I've been on my healing journey for 4 years, and so 4 years of April, since April 2007, really. And so, you have to listen at your own discretion, right? I'm just talking about abuse, and abuse is a very sensitive subject. And so if you think the topics of abuse of any type or any type of sexual violence or abuse or anything like that might bother you, then you need to turn the show off. Ultimately, it's your discretion to listen to my shows, and that's a warning for all of my shows, right? And I do put a discretionary warning on my show page for all of my shows, right? Like, you have to know what's good for you to listen to, and if you just think the show might bother you, make sure you don't listen to it. It won't be hurting my feelings at all. We all have to be responsible for what we're listening to, right? And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows, like have somebody listen to the show with you who's older, who's an adult, who can help you make a decision whether or not age appropriately it's okay for you to listen to it, right? This is definitely not for younger children. My shows are not. So that's why I put a warning there for people under 18, to have somebody listen to the show with you. They can help you make a decision, right? So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I have some allergy issues here this morning or something. I don't think it's a cold. I think it's more of an allergy. And my apartment's about 85 degrees right now, so it's warm and I can't breathe. But we'll get through this. So thanks, everybody, for being here. And we're looking at Robert Burney's web pages, and Robert Burney's awesome. He's got some great stuff on his website, www.joy2meu.com, joy the number 2, meu.com. And we're looking at spiritual integration, which is the second piece that he's written on the inner child healing work, like recovery work. So I wanted to take a look through this and see what, so far it looks pretty interesting. I was just talking, going through some of it yesterday. Robert Burney he's a codependence counselor, he's a grief counselor, he's a spiritual teacher, he's written a book called Codependence, The Dance of Wounded Souls, and we've been looking at his website for now probably 2.5 months. So it's extensive. When you go onto his website, you can see, if you go to the site index of Joy to Me and You, or Joy to You and Me, it's actually Joy, Joy, the number 2, meu.com. His website there, the site index, you can see just how much he's got there. It's extensive. He's done a lot of work, and he's written a whole lot of stuff here about anything to do with like codependency, boundary work, inner child healing, relationship stuff, really good stuff. So we haven't even really gotten into this yet, and we've already been on this webpage for 2.5 months. So I don't think that I'm not going to look through all of it, but I definitely want to cover the inner child healing work, and that's just because that's what I'm doing right now, right? I'm actually working on my inner child, my own inner children. So it was important for me to look for as much information as I could find that could help me make sense of what's going on inside me through my healing journey, and who these little inner children were. And I already did that work already. Looking at Hope for Us web pages. Called Hope for Survivors. And looking at she looks at John Bradshaw's work and talking about the inner child work and whatnot. So this is why I'm doing this. It's really for my, so I can make sense of my inner child work that I need to do, and sort of give me some ideas on what I need to do. And I find it helpful. So hopefully everybody else is too. And it allows me to just talk through my stuff, like make sense of what happened. And it allows me to also to show, listeners, hey, they're not alone, And so hopefully you're all getting something out of this. So we were looking at this yesterday. He says, in order to stop reacting to life from a victim perspective and start waking up to our own power, to change the quality of our life, it is necessary to be open to a larger larger definitions of the meaning and purpose of life than the ones we were taught growing up. So I was really going into that yesterday. And if we are reacting to life based on the black and white perspective of a rigid belief system, or in reaction to that black and white perspective, then we are not open to expanding our perspective. He says, then we are just stuck in being the victim and we cannot see reality clearly. So he says, it is important to start seeing the reality of the cause and effect dynamic that governs life so that we can start changing the behavior patterns that we adapted to cope with life. So until we are open to seeing the cause and effect between our childhoods and our adult patterns, we will continue to give power to the belief that there's something wrong with us individually. And that toxic shame feeling that tells us it is our fault, that life hasn't worked the way we thought it was going to, is the main enemy here. So that toxic shame feeling that tells us it's our fault, that life hasn't worked the way we thought it was going to, is the enemy here. He says it is very important to develop a relationship with life that allows for the belief that it is not shameful to be human, and that who we are is not bad or wrong. I think that's very interesting. He talks a lot about that. About human being, the human mankind, human beings. We really do shame ourselves because we think that we're supposed to be, perfect or something. You know what I mean? We're not allowed to make mistakes. We're not allowed to, if we're not at a certain point in our life, we a lot of times people will sit back and they'll just say, "Oh, I'm such a loser. Look, I don't have a house. I don't have a, top-notch career. Look at me, And so many times people will really run themselves right down. And I think, and when you're dealing with, survivors of abuse, it's real easy for us to do that. We've already been run down. That's the problem. And so it's almost a cycle, right, of looking at ourselves in a shameful manner and saying, or looking at ourselves it's that critical, shaming, blaming inner parent voice, really. We already kind of went through all that like weeks ago. But it's part of it, to continually keep ourselves feeling bad because our life hasn't gone exactly the way we thought it should. And so then we can't experience any joy when we're doing that. We can't experience any sense of satisfaction about our life. And I don't do that. Like I'm very careful to not do that because I realize that, man, I'm coming from behind the eight ball, first of all. And from going abused and then self-inflicted damage to myself as well, like drug abuse and not so much alcohol abuse, but mainly drug abuse and cigarettes, and just not taking care of myself, and then not really thinking about the future because I was just thinking I wasn't even going to live to be 30, so I thought, why bother planning my future? And so kind of coming from behind the eight ball, and I got a late start, And so I'm not concerned about where I'm at right now as far as trying to compare myself with other people. I just set little goals for myself, try to encourage myself to do a little bit for myself, It's not so much to keep up with the Joneses because there's no possible way that I could do that, you know what I mean? So if I was basing all of my happiness on whether or not I had a house, 2 or 3 kids and grandkids, had a real marriage, right? With the ring and the wedding, if these things were important to me, I'd be screwed, right? I'd be completely screwed because it's just not happening. And so, I don't base my happiness on materialistic things or things that just didn't go the way I wanted them to. When I was younger, of course, I wanted things to go a certain way. I had dreams and visions when I was a little girl of being married and the whole 9 yards, the wedding and the white wedding gown and having kids. I wanted to have like 10 kids. Even growing up abused, and having the mindset, like having the issues that I had with my psychological well-being, I still thought it'd be great to have a big family, and I just, the idea of having a bunch of kids around and a husband and, all that stuff was a dream of mine, And even into my 20s, kind of thought that it could be a reality, and that's the whole issue. And then I was told that I probably would not be able to bear children, my body might not. Really probably wouldn't be able to even conceive a child. They said, well, if you get pregnant, it'd be a miracle, really. But if you do, because strange things have happened, you may not be able to carry that child. Right? So then in my 30s, I was finally able to conceive a child, and with my sweetheart, who I'm actually with right now. And, we lost that baby halfway through, and of course I was devastated, But so many times in life, we won't be where we think we should have been. And then we we shame ourselves and blame ourselves for it. When actually really what I'm just trying to do is make my way through this life and be happy about what I can be happy in and not worry about the rest. And I think it's really important to do that, because otherwise we just spend our lives miserable, thinking, oh well, if this would have happened, this would have made my life great. If or if this would have happened, if this wouldn't have happened, then I wouldn't, and always looking at it as if it could have ever been any different. It is just what it is, and you can't change that. So that's why it's really important to not focus on that stuff, and really just focus on the more positive stuff, I think, and looking at our strengths instead of our weaknesses, and working on the weaknesses maybe if it's stuff that we can change. And that's why behaviorally, I think, this is totally really good work here that, like Robert is talking about, because behaviorally, really, this is a lot of the issue is these behaviors we just take on because we grew up in these toxic, shaming households where we were told, oh, you're just a loser, or you're no good, or you're a bad kid, right? Or it's your fault. It's your fault that the family's doing, is having problems, or whatever the situation may be. And then, maybe even shamed by teachers, maybe shamed by coaches, maybe shamed by somebody, and made to feel lesser than, lower than, not quite as good, doesn't measure up. And if it's reinforced, pretty soon people will, children will start to feel like that must be true, That's what everybody's telling me. And so then you really live lesser than you live a lesser than life, because you actually will make sure that you don't have anything. You just make sure that you will do exactly what those people said you were going to do, which was to be a loser, and that and then at the end of the day you can say, well, yeah, it's just the way it is. I'm just a loser, and talk yourself right into the fact that really this is all a big lie. It's absolutely a lie. It's a disease, and the issue is that we have to start feeling differently about ourselves, and we have to be able to change those behavior patterns that were dumped on us as children. It's not our fault. So I don't sit here today and say, really honestly, that very much of my stuff is my fault. The behavioral stuff that I learned from growing up where I grew up in this ridiculous home, from these people who had no clue what they were doing, well, except for they knew they were hurting us, but they didn't mind that. But they had no clue how to help themselves, right? And so they couldn't help us. And the parents that can't help themselves certainly can't help their children. And so they were screwed, we were screwed, right? And so, it's kind of, you think, well, a lot of this stuff was not my fault, and I can't really take too much responsibility for it. But what I can do now, because now that I know that I can't take responsibility for all that stuff, now I have to start taking responsibility for all this stuff, and changing my behaviors and changing things to be able to look for this good stuff in life, to look for this joy, to look for these relationships, to look for whatever it is that's going to bring us peace in this world and peace in this life. So it is important. I think he's just got it right. Like, I like what he has to say on a lot of his stuff here. He says, none of the details of any of these explanations of the unexplainable should be taken too seriously or literally. It is impossible to describe the indescribable. They are merely tools to facilitate a paradigm shift in consciousness, to help us open up to larger definitions of the creator or the creation than those we were taught in childhood. So the goal here is to empower a more expansive context within which to view the dance of life, one which allows for a perspective of human experience that does not include shame and sin. So that he says, his belief system, he just has his own belief system, and he's not saying that anybody should actually believe what he believes. Robert Burney, he's just, he says everybody has to have their own belief system. And so he sort of talks about, his own belief system throughout the whole thing. But some of it I can relate to. Some of it makes sense to me and some of it doesn't. But it doesn't matter, because mainly I like what he is saying. A lot of the stuff that he has is pretty helpful. But he says, I use the term dysfunctional here in the sense that the individual being does not feel honored, respected, and connected to the whole in a way that promotes happiness and fulfillment. Yeah, so he uses the term dysfunctional in the sense that the individual being does not feel honored, respected, and connected to the whole in a way that promotes happiness and fulfillment. It is very helpful to have a spiritual belief system that allows for the possibility that some kind of cosmic order exists, that there is in fact some meaning and purpose for human life. A belief system that affords the individual being dignity and respect, and promotes the possibility that there is a connection between the individual and the whole that makes some sense. I mean, that's just true. I mean, as people on this earth, like we come in and we have this human experience, and we all, and whoever we're with at the same time gets to experience it with us. And but we all have our own individual experience. It's really quite interesting. But the thing is I think what he says it the individual just doesn't feel honored, respected, or connected to the whole. Looking back at that situation, that was my mother, and I mean she wasn't right. Like my mother was, she grew up in an abusive home, and she was abused herself, and then married this man, who would not love her and not treat her right, ever, and stayed with him, because she didn't see any other life. When she growing up abused like that, and being so warped and so twisted, and then having spent 15 years with this abusive man, she had options to get out. She could have got out, but some people say, really? Well, maybe she couldn't, right? And I think, well, no, she could have, but she had to make a decision on what was more important to her, whether she wanted to stay in the abuse and keep us children in it too, or whether she wanted to go on to find this life where she would feel honored, respected, and connected to the whole, right? Because she was, at the end of the road, she was like, I hate my life. Like, my mother was a prime example of what not to do. She was my example of what not to do in life, right? I was like, oh, geez, I don't want to end up like that, because that's a horrible way to end up. And, 2 of my brothers killed themselves. That's a horrible way to end up, And it's just like, at the end of the road, my mom was just like, I hate this life. I hate it. And she was 68 or 67 on her deathbed, pretty well, like the year before she died. And I mean, she had been saying that her whole life, right? That wasn't anything new. We had heard that. Like, I had heard that growing up since I was a small child. She hated this life. She hated this family. She hated herself. She hated everything. And she hated her husband. She hated her children. I mean, she just hated everything. She just had a hate on, because she was so wounded, and she never, ever got any help, And I mean, there wasn't really, she didn't try. We had social workers around. My mom had parental support. Like, these people would come and they would talk to her, and when those social workers were actually coming around was really an interesting time for me, because they would give her tips on how to be good to me and what a little child like me would need. So she would set up little tea parties for me. I was really the only child that got that out of the 7, because the social workers were involved when I was about, like, between the ages of 2 and 3. And so, my mom would set these little tea parties up for me. I totally remember it. And, she would put little milk in the little cups. She would sit there, because these social workers were telling her, you need to do this for your daughter. You need to start incorporating some sort of something, into, with her, like, to bond with her, to try to nurture her, just to experience some good stuff with her, because I was just born into this ridiculous, hateful, abusive mess. And so, she tried. She tried for a little while. My mom tried, obviously. She tried her whole life. But she was always, always, always going to be screwed, because she would not change her belief system. She would not change the way she felt about herself. She felt so dishonored, so disrespected, which she was. I mean, she was treated horribly by her own mother, and then into this marriage where she was not honored, she was not loved, she was not respected by my dad. Didn't feel any love toward the children because they were the offspring of my dad, right? And my dad, of course, didn't feel any love or anything towards us or care about us because we were the offspring of my mother. The 2 of them hated each other. And so there, you have this situation where, at the end of the road, she was just like, this life was horrible, and really what she was looking for, and I keep it in the in the back of my mind, really, because I remember the whole situation, that she just wanted to feel loved. She just wanted to feel honored. She just wanted to feel respected, and she wanted to feel that she was a person. She would tell my older brother sometimes. I remember I was about 6 years old, 7 years old, and she would tell one of my older brothers, she'd be like, I don't even know who I am, And my older brother would be like, you're Barbara, that's your name. Because, nobody called her name. Everybody was just calling her Mom, My dad was calling her a whore and everything else. But, the rest of us were calling her Mom. And, she said, I don't even know who I am. I have no idea. I'm lost, Because she grew up abused. She grew up in this huge, huge mess. And and then didn't get a hold of herself before she got into this other sick and twisted real mess for herself as a reality, again with my dad, which was as evil and sick and twisted as you can imagine, right? I point out some of it, but I have not really described all of it, and I will at one point probably hopefully get around to that. But the issue is I mean, she lived in this evil hell, with this guy, and it changed her. I mean, I think she obviously, nobody starts out like this. No child is born just to end up like this. It's just life will throw people some curveballs, man, and it's pretty harsh. But I think that's really what she wanted. She wanted to feel like she knew who she was, and my brother was like, "You're Barbara," and she was like, "Well, who's Barbara?" She said, she said that was the first time she actually cried. She used to cry about that all the time, actually, because she said that was the first time that she realized that she even had a name, since probably childhood or something. That she really had an identity crisis. She had, she was either dissociative or she was multiple or something. But anyway, whatever the situation was, she really didn't even know who she was, And so, the fear and the panic and the dread of knowing that you're living this life with this man who is just killing you in every way. And these children that you did not want, but you're stuck with anyway. It's real easy to become an abuser in that situation because all of a sudden you don't care, And so that's what happened to her. She just gave up. She was just like, I don't care, But she was doing that. My oldest sister would talk about the stuff that my mom would do when she was growing up. My older sister was the oldest. I was the youngest. There's a whole bunch of us in between. And then my sister was 18 years older than me. And so my sister would tell me about all the stuff my mom was doing when she was younger, because my mom had her first child when she was 20, so my mom had me when she was 38. When my mom was 20, let's say some of my sister's first cognitive memories are when she was about 5 or 6. So she said that when my mom was 25, 26 years old, she was highly, highly abusive. So it's not just like my mom became abusive when I came along. And then all of a sudden, because I was born, things went wrong, and my mother started abusing the kids. Right, my mother had been abusing her children, for 18 years, and not treating them right, and she had no sense of how she had no sense of how to help herself. She had no sense of how to help her children, and yet would abuse them, and abuse me, and then blame my dad. Right, and it was all my dad's fault. It was never her fault. It's pretty sad that people will allow themselves to get that screwed up and that far down, and make these wrong choices. Because, see, at the end of the day, she had to live with herself. At the end of the day, and that's why she hated herself. She was like, I hate this life. I should have killed myself years ago, I mean, she'd be crying at the kitchen table. I should have killed myself. This would have been like a nightly thing. This was like dessert. It's like, oh, don't kill yourself, Mom. That's what anybody who was around would chime in. She'd be like, oh, shut the fuck up, I'll kill you. That was my mother, right? And so it was horrible. It was a horrible existence, for her and for all of us, because she put that on us. You know what I mean? It made us wear it for a long, long time. My dad was just as responsible and very, very sick and twisted. Very evil man. And, those two, there's no possible way they could be connected to the whole. That they could get, that they could be feeling respected or honored or anything else. Because there was nothing about them that you could honor or respect. I mean, people who treat people so horribly and then, blame the world and blame society or blame somebody, but that they could treat somebody the way that they do, that horrifically, they still have to live with themselves at the end of the day. and there's no respect or honor in that, And so, I mean, I looked at my parents and said, man, I have to do the exact really opposite of what they did. Because I do not want to end up that way. You know what I mean? At the end of my life saying, oh, God, what a horrible existence. I thought, I got to change this. So we really do. If we of course, all of us want to find love and feel honored and to and respected and connected to the whole. Everybody probably feels a bit like that. Having dignity and respect. That's what my mother used to talk about a lot, was about dignity. She's like, I just want to be treated with dignity, because she wasn't. She wasn't being treated with dignity at all. She was on her deathbed. My dad was raping her. Like, that's why my brother raped me, I'm sure of it. He found it really, my siblings, my older siblings, had to protect my mother from my dad. And, my dad, of course, would beat them up and, of course, rape my mother anyway, right? And so here's my brother's watching my dad rape my mother, right? And she was sick and she was ill and she was not capable of having sex, right? And my dad would, of course, rape her anyway because he wanted what he wanted. Well, that's why my brother, 21-year-old brother, decided to rape me, because that's what he wanted. He wanted it. He took it. I was 8 years old, right? So that's what you teach your children, And that's a really sick and twisted, but that's the truth of it. And where's the dignity? Where's the human dignity in that? There's no human dignity in raping someone. I don't care who it is, whether it's a man, woman, or child. There's no dignity in that. There's no compassion or mercy in that. It's just like, no, I'll take what I'm taking and it's mine. And I don't care if I hurt you in the process, right? And if this is the horrific reality that so many people have had to live with. I mean, even molestation. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Anything where somebody says, I'm doing to you what I want to do because it's my right. To take away your human dignity doing that, and force you to believe and behave a certain way because of it, and have to deal with the aftermath, right? And it's harsh. It's absolutely harsh. It is. My mother was just like, why will not somebody treat me with dignity? But then there were some of her children, of course, who loved her so much, like most of us would try to tell her that we did, even though, she was our main abuser, with me especially. But, we would still try to help her because we knew she was suffering, and we were like, we would try to stand up against my dad, you know what I mean? And, a lot of my siblings were like, we should just kill him. And then I grew up thinking that we should just kill him. We should take him out, And by the time I was like 13 years old, I was telling my mom, just either let's just move or you just kill him or something. Like, something's got to be done, right? I mean, a guy, like, how many years can you take this, How many years can your body take this? How many years can your mind take this? Because not only was her body being raped and assaulted, her mind was assaulted all the time. My dad was an evil, evil, twisted man. Okay, and then he'd go to church on Sunday and fake all the church people out. Oh, I just love my wife and children, and then come home and do the same old thing all over again. That's what he's been doing all his life. That's what he's still doing, It's just like, I mean, that's pretty harsh to have to live like that, And so my siblings saw that. So one of my brothers chose to do that to me, and sexually use me for 7 months, about 7 months, I'd say. And, that's pretty harsh, right? I mean, that's like saying, I don't care if you're bleeding, I don't care if you're hurt. This was how my dad was. Raped my mother. He didn't care if she could have sex or not. He didn't care if she was capable, right, of having sex. He would hurt her. He would just take what he wanted and he would hurt her. My brother witnessing that, that's what he did to me. And he didn't care that he hurt me. He didn't care that I was bleeding. He didn't care that he had ripped me to shreds inside. And he would still use me again and again and again. And my mother let it go on. Why? Because it was what was going on with her. At the very same time as that was going on with me, my dad was doing the same thing to her. Right? That's the very nature, of evil and hatred and abuse. You know what I mean? And it has nothing to do with dignity, honor, and respect. Right? And so, my mother, of course, she wanted honor and she wanted to be treated with love and care, and she never had been, not since a child, not as an adult, And so it's very important, that's why in my journey, to not, for myself, I had to put my foot down. I said, I will never be abused again. I will never let anyone ever abuse me or treat me wrong again. And I actually hold people to that in my life very, very carefully, because, I mean, I can cut people off in a matter of a second. So, like, if somebody hurts me, they are gone. They are so gone. And I only give people so many chances, because I'm like, no way will I tolerate any more of that, I want to be treated with dignity, with respect, with love. And so, that's the issue here. It's a huge issue, right? Thanks, everybody, for being here. Have a great day. I'll be back on tonight on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. Carol D. Levine is going to be on Panic Child, author of Panic Child. I hope you will join me for that. 11 o'clock p.m. here on Eastern time, 11 o'clock p.m. On Blog Talk Radio. And otherwise, I'll be back on tomorrow, my show here at the same time, same place. One child abuse survivor to another. And we'll just continue on here and take another look at the rest of this article. But it's good stuff. I hope you will go there. www.joy2meu.com. That's where we're looking. Robert Burney's webpage is Codependence, the Dance of Wounded Souls. Really good stuff. So thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. Have a great day. If you can't cope, you call a crisis line, but you do whatever you have to do. You know what I mean? It's really ultimately up to us. We have to get help if we need help. If you can't do self-help and if you can't cope, then you make sure that you get some help of some sort, right? Because you deserve it. You deserve it. I deserve it. You know, and sometimes we need to reach out. Sometimes we need that help. And so if you're not coping well and you're having a hard time and you're just thinking, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this, because that's where I was 4 years ago. You know, you figure it out. You know, you just figure it out. Like, I refuse to let my abusers win this fight. I'm not letting my parents win this fight. No way. And I'm not letting my brother win this fight. They're not destroying me. I'm just way too valuable to myself to allow them to do that. And you have to matter to yourself. And in order to do that, you have to get in touch with yourself. You have to realize that we do, and we need to love ourselves. And we need to take really good care of ourselves because we weren't taken care of. You know, and we need to be very, very careful and make sure that, and allow ourselves to get help if we need it, right? So that's why I say, if you have to, call a crisis line. They're anonymous, you know. If I can get you the information, let me know. You know, you can send me a message here on Blog Talk Radio. You know, if there's anything that you think about, you know, any information about anything dealing with adult survivor issues that you're just looking for, you know, and I may have seen it, let me know. And otherwise, have a great day, everybody. You know, look for that good stuff, man. Look for that good stuff. Look for those bad days, right? There's going to be bad days. There's going to be horrible days. Like, we know this. That's life. Life will throw stuff at us all the time. But we got to look for the good stuff, right? So don't forget that. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.